Greetings and welcome to the channel. This is Ron from the Order of the Twin Sun. We'll be taking a slight drawback on the readings for the tarot readings for this month. They will be postponed for a minute. The Great Mirror needs to essentially recharge. So yeah, we're going to be going into a reading that is primarily on the tropical zodiac that shows current planets for August 4th, 2021, okay? Um, so this is going to be interesting considering we have here the dragon's head as well as the dragon's tail, Rahu and Ketu. In a very sort of interesting placement that has been here for a while now, and this is something that I wanted to start with. These nodes of the moon are at the 7-degree mark within the realm of uh, the within the realm of Gemini, which is essentially the third house and the ninth house axis of Sagittarius. Okay. Now, within this, there is a spinning of dogmatic ways that are being retaught or restructured through the auspices of the great teachers of the zodiac, and that is Jupiter and Saturn. Okay, both are in retrograde as well, double retrograde, and naturally there is a retrograde movement of Rahu and Ketu, the north node and south node, the dragon's head and the dragon's tail swings accordingly in retrograde motion. This is the shadow effect of those nodes, okay, and the ecliptics that bind together. From this, there certainly is a delay in educational systems, systems or structures that are Uranian in nature, and we've seen this over time since Saturn's sort of movement into Aquarius and then back into Capricorn and back again. There certainly is a great deal of restructuring from the 10th to the 11th houses. Okay, so this is the external world being dominated by Saturn, and then Saturn being retrofitted or retroactively sort of revisited according to the Uranian lens. Okay, this has to do with essentially the stemming or the offsetting that we may have seen back in the time of nuclear agendas. Okay, this includes nuclear families and retrofitting within the structures that define family systems. And in that respect, father figures here are latent and they are also complacent and gone. This includes father figures that you project onto others in terms of the psychological stigma that revolves around God the Father, the Christ symbol, and the second coming that doesn't ever seem to be coming. Okay, these are things that we should keep in mind, especially with Saturn in retrograde in the energy of Aquarius, right, 10 degrees, and the opposition in Leo. Okay, the opposition of two planets that are opposing um, said systems. Okay, and the systems are going through a type of crystallization that is through vitrification. Okay, you take Saturn, for example. This is tied to metallurgy as well as alchemy. This is something of the long limitation of the process of alchemy, okay, which is still a mystery to many people, even though there are universities that have found and perfected in Japan as well as in California the alchemical process through the synthesis of gold. Okay, so this is one part of alchemy. There are many parts of alchemy, but alchemy is truly one of the esoteric crafts that has not been mastered since the Egyptian age, the age of the Egyptian Empire. Okay, This being said, there's something that is occurring in terms of the lessons of Saturn that are also part of the lessons of Jupiter in terms of actions that we can purify through the energy of curatorial Virgo. Okay, that we set into motion and then we try to achieve a sense of harmony and balance through the Venus and Virgo energy. Okay, Venus in Virgo is not the best of placements, um, but in terms of that, there is still some sort of waxing in terms of the detail that we put into our creative projects, okay, as well as the intelligence that that we find through the energy of the purity of Virgo, the analysis of Virgo, but also of the enlightened mind that comes through the principle of Luciferian transgression, post and pre and post lapsarian sort of awareness, self awareness, okay, that is aspected here by Taurus, Uranus, and Taurus. And this has been a placement for Uranus in quite some time. Not the best place because, Taurus is essentially what we can contain, what we can hold. And there's something about this that with the sort of Uranian signature here with Uranus as well as Aquarius in both the teacher signs of Jupiter and Saturn, both in retrograde, 29 degrees Jupiter and 10 degrees Saturn in Aquarius. There is certainly difficulty in terms of the actions that we produce in order to find in our controlling or manipulative ways sort of the inauspices of Jupiter in retrograde. Okay, so we have to hang in there in terms of mentorship, in terms of finding gurus or finding teachers that are out there, but they're just totally unavailable for the time being. At least they're brooding in their own scientific or perhaps high-minded 11th house way. They're probably ascending into astral projections of sorts into other places. Okay, difficult considering if we go back to the Dragon's Head, the North Node here in excuse me, the North Node in the Gemini. There is a great deal here that is tied to our emotional sort of eclipsing here with the Moon, as well as Lilith in 1 degrees and 19 degrees of Gemini, and the North Node being here. So there certainly is a type of illumination or an emotional charge to the student who is seeking out gurus, seeking out teachers and lessons from a sort of a Jupiter that is not willing to give it for the time being. Jupiter is too busy sort of glazing over the into the etheric realm. Okay, so our actions in this respect, they may be sort of contained or curatorial in a way in order to find a produce effect that may be binding according to the auspices of secret wisdom or secret knowledge found through the deep analysis and critical self-reflection, the mirror of Virgo. Okay, so fairly interesting sort of dynamic playing out there. But at the same time, we go back to Saturn in retrograde. Saturn is about limitation. It's about also the dry and the coarse. And as I've mentioned before, it's an alchemical sort of procedure because it's through the great limitations and the failures that we go through in the process of alchemy, in which we're trying to find essentially uh, um, an idol or perhaps something that resembles similitude, something that may be spurious or false, but then it still is sort of dichotomous and it can still represent some sort of parallel waveform or parallel sort of reality. Okay, um, and that is something that collective conscious is actually trying to go to in terms of the great pandemic and the great epidemic that has been going on for quite some time. Okay, ever since the conjunction with Saturn and Jupiter, or Saturn and Uranus, I can't remember which, that triggered essentially the epidemic. Okay, so there is a sense of a return back to the way things were, but then irrevocably effaced by something that we have seen before in the 1950s with the discovery of uranium, if I'm not mistaken, as well as the excuse me, the explosion of the baby boom generation. Okay, as well as the proclivities of the nuclear family, a family that sustains under one house, and sort of the the illumination of the American dream, these dreams that we project into reality that want to be sort of sustained in terms of our hubris or our arrogance in terms of survival instinct that is supported by Taurus and Uranus. Okay, what we can embrace in terms of and hold on to in terms of this ingenuity may not be here forever, and it really depends on the lessons that Saturn will eventually give us in terms of its relation to the prime mover in a medieval sense, as well as its relation to fixed stars, okay, which we are not going to cover in this particular reading. Um, Also, there is a great challenge here when it comes to our own independence, okay? Especially through the auspices of what we can um, gain from the auspices of Sun and Mercury, okay? Sun and Mercury are usually around the same vicinity as they oscillate in the same part of the sky, usually. So a lot of people have this combination, conjunct of Sun combust Mercury. Okay, so if Mercury is combust, and I argue it is, it means that there is a great sense of ego and a great sense of pride in what we do and what we sort of try to bring about in terms of our children, pride in our children, pride in our creative works, pride in our romances, and you have to watch. We have to watch for these sparks or these solar flares of egoism that essentially can lead to heat waves, as well as explosive temperaments that cannot be sort of tempered. There's a lot of passion going on in the sky right now, and it's linked to the sensuality of the individuation of Taurus in Uranus, in which it embraces the risky, the perverted, as well as a great deal of sexual energy that is activated through romantic affairs. And there's a square here, meaning that Taurus cannot express itself in a steady way, in a very sensual, slow way, because of the fast and intense, sort of dynamics of Leo principles, meaning that the ego or the superego can be taking a superimposed effect, okay? Luckily, there is essentially some healing to be done in terms of the energy of Aries with Chiron here in retrograde. Latent healing that occurs through this passion or this need to express oneself with creativity. There is a link to the energy of the solar sun in Leo, as well as the energy of Chiron in excuse me, in Aries, 12 degrees. With this, there is essentially a great deal of excuse me, of goodness. Goodness in terms of purification, the purification process. Now, if Taurus is holding on to things that are oscillating or vibrating out of our control, then Taurus cannot be chill. Okay, and this makes Taurus angry, and when Taurus is angry, Leo, eventually might get the brunt of that, and that's the problem because the ego will be damaged. There's a lot of ego damaging going on now. Apologies being need to be made, especially to teachers who are unavailable, especially anyone who is an elder, essentially, is quite unavailable or busy on their own sort of schema, trying to understand their place, especially if they've been exposed to the boomer generation, as well as if they've been exposed to um, uh, the innovations of science and the innovations of technology that cannot be sort of understood. That being said, there is a great sense of a great sense of things that we can hold on to in terms of technological advancements or social dynamics that occur on social media platforms. Okay, um, and this, you have to be careful what you say, because if you come off as someone who has a combust Mercury, a combust mind, essentially, a combust hand, a slow hand, or perhaps a hand that has been burned, a hand that does not know what it is, does not have the awareness of what its effect can create in terms of typing up a post, or giving the finger, flipping the bird. There's a lot that can occur in terms of offense. Okay, especially when we look at the triplicity of Earth. There's harmony between Uranus in Taurus and Uranus in Venus. Okay, sorry, Venus in Virgo, as well as Uranus in Taurus. Okay, and this is a very good aspect that allows for a great deal of grounding when it comes to um, the curatorial process of what we can feel pleasure in, what we can create, what we can value in terms of our own sense of beauty that comes through the virginal lens. Okay, meaning that things are changing, and the triplicity, at least half the triplicity of Earth is looking for a sense of two-thirds of it actually is looking for a sense of new and innovative beauty that can be curated in some sort of way. Okay, um, let's see what else is there. Lilith squaring. Okay, Lilith squaring Mars, and Mars being in Virgo. Okay, Mars in Virgo, I mean, it's not too bad. There is a lot of criticism that is occurring, that criticism especially to the younger generation, or anything that's tied to the third house, criticism online, criticism in the communities that surround you, that are somewhat difficult in terms of procuring the actions that occur there, and trying to understand some of the more violent impulses that come from this. This is because of the expansion of Vata like or airy like qualities in the retrograde of Jupiter. Okay. Um, it's not a very good place to have Jupiter. I mean, what will expand is um, a sense of this violence that occurs um, when it comes to the ability to learn what is being trying to be expressed on an emotional level, and it having direct ramifications with philosophies that are emerging, that have to do with a great deal of of the Aquarian age. Okay, I mean, this is some very interesting dynamics, considering the dream is shifting, and with all these planets in retrograde, we have here Neptune as well, Jupiter, Saturn, as well as Pluto in retrograde, and Chiron, all across the face of the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 1st houses of those energies, which is quite interesting, considering once these planets go direct, there will be gifts that will help certain things. Okay, so um, anything that has to do with the mind not being present, you must find a center point and sort of expand in a certain way within limitation in order to push forward Uranian like things, okay, Uranian type ingenuities that are extremely unorthodox and against the system. If you embrace this rebellion, there is a possibility of some great reward, excuse me, that should disintegrate the ego as well, provide something that you can hold on to in terms of online presences or um, the word or the way in which you can capture someone's attention, okay, and like teach them something in a very slow and methodical manner that has the silver lining of ingenuity. These are possibilities, okay. Um, yes. So back to the South Node in Sagittarius. With this, there is a great deal of energy that is tied to the south node of the moon, and also um, what we naturally sort of uh, are gaining in terms of affinity, what we are naturally rolling back to. These are philosophies and ways of thinking from the past that directly sort of activates the higher minds, okay? Excuse me. So this is essentially tied to ancient knowledge, systems of knowledge that have been either lost or trying to be refound in some sort of way and trying to be resurfaced. These are insights that are of an expansive nature and that are tied to the galactic center, okay? And anything that is tied to the galactic center is also subject to parallel dimensions, the ability to learn from gurus or teachers throughout the astral realm in terms of these beings that can cross interdimensionally and have the ability to access a great deal of information from planes um, that are essentially planes and vaults that hold very very sacred information that has to do with wisdom and true knowing. Okay, these are things that we naturally fall back to. The idea of truth in its most purest state, that is self-evident, does not have to be said. Okay, this is something that we can learn from, and there's an emotional or perhaps an intuitive knowing through the mother who is being a student and being challenged by others in order to understand the desire of becoming the mother of invention or the magician or someone who is able to essentially take the first step into unknown dimensions of learning and communication that need to be expressed on a self-conscious and deep stratification of knowing and self-awareness, as well as emotional and meaningful sort of movement, okay? Um, and that is the general impression that I'm seeing. There are certain actions that are tied to desires in order to become privy to your more immediate environment as we emerge out of the chrysalis that has been forced by the auspices of change and expansion. There's something extremely Aquarian about all of this, in which we can find a type of system that would help us to find independence as well. Excuse me. Um, heal to heal anything that would eventually need it, especially when it comes to the combusted mind, the mind on fire that is now sort of trying to find its way into illumination as opposed to being burned in stupidity. You know, there's something here that can help with that in terms of purity in the realm of purification, to burn the thoughts that do not matter in order to grab hold of what we can value and be curatorial and aficionados in that pleasure principle that is of a new age. Okay, yeah, that is what I see. This is run from Order of the Twin Sun. Signing out. If you would like a private reading, I am available. I am gearing towards sidereal readings in terms of the Kundli charts, birth charts, as well as Vimshottari Dasha, the different lagnas, including Dwadashansha, and mostly I'm trying to become privy to the Brihatparasara Horashastra, as well as the teachings of Maharishi Jaimini. So a bit of Gemini astrology as well. My tarot practice is still strong. If you would like a tarot reading, I am also available, but um, we have to give it a break for a little bit of time before I get back into the regular flow of great mirror readings, which should occur within the order of the twin sun in due time. For now, I wish you well, and hopefully this has been edifying to say the least. And I do send out the best vibrations for Savitur, the great sun, and Ravi, Aryaman, and all the rest in terms of the Adityas, trying to understand through solar energy that which we can shed light into every corner of this galaxy. Um, yes, so please take care and thank you. Bye bye.